right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our spiritual sojourn. Hi, Tom. How are you doing?
Hi, Lori. I'm doing really well.
Good deal. We have a special guest in the house today. My good friend Gayle Fowler is here, and she's going to talk with us a bit today about her incredible work that I believe you call it shamanic Reiki. Am I correct in that? That's what I call it.
Right. I kind of came up with that after reading a book. So yeah.
So, welcome to our podcast. And tell us just a little bit about you. Who's Gayle?
Well, I do live in Colorado, but I'm originally from Hawaii. So I was born and raised and left in about, I think it was 96. So I come from a very diverse ethnicity background, even though I'm Japanese from Hawaii. So we were brought up with a lot of superstitions that now I'm finding they're not superstitions. So I am one of three girls, and I think my sisters are gifted as well. But I think due to some, childhood traumas and things, I started to hone my skills a little more.
Mhm.
And so my mom likes to call me, well, you were always the strange one, you know, with love, of course, but I always tell people I was born this way. So I could sense things. I could definitely see spirits I would say because sometimes it's more just sensing it. I could feel energy vortexes or, portals. I thought everybody did. So I didn't think I was anything special. I would hear things. So it wasn't until I got a little older where I found out that no, not everybody is experiencing what I experienced. And part of the growing up and my mom being concerned that people might think I'm crazy, we kind of held things back. But it's kind of difficult when you keep receiving messages
Right.
or seeing or the sense of knowing. So it wasn't really until I um, decided to become a to become a Reiki practitioner. And I had a great teacher, Marnie Vincolisi, and taking her classes helped me to realize that, wait, this was real, and I wasn't making it up. And I can't remember. I was just talking to my friend yesterday. I said, in regards to channeling or receiving messages, I was struggling with that. Did I make that up? And is it because something I saw, all these little things? And she looked at me straight in the eye. She goes, Gayle, did you lie? I'm like, no. She goes, do you make up stories? I said, no. She goes, then why would you start now? So
Exactly.
that helped me that, plus all the other people that I worked with and, helped me to validate things like having great sessions with Lori too. It really helps me to figure out, okay, you're not crazy. This is real. And so I started with my healing portions of it, when I moved to Colorado. And I noticed that I would receive messages for the person I'm working on. But in the beginning, I wouldn't say a thing. I'm focusing. I'm trying to figure out the right hand positions, in the very beginning. But my teacher, Marnie, she had asked, I think on a healing exchange, she goes, do you receive messages? I'm like, yeah. She goes, what do you do with it? Nothing. She's like, why? And I said, because what if it's because I saw something last night or, I don't know if I'm making it up or not. And, I kept giving all these excuses. And finally she said, what if I told you that those messages were part of the healing? And I said, oh. She said, maybe you should ask the person you're working on when you get some, interesting messages coming in, if it resonates with them. So me being very analytical, I'm like, okay, she gave me the green light. My teacher says I could do this. So I started doing that. And I would say, I, I think maybe in the beginning, maybe it was like 95% of the people it made sense, or they could, it was something that, oh my gosh, how did you know, type of thing. And going, well, I guess this is not crazy because, this is for that person. And I want to say the other 5%, either they didn't say, or they couldn't connect with whoever had come through too, because, sometimes the guides or their family members who passed comes through, and they may not know who it is.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when I receive it, it's like, I have no idea who they are. This is what I feel, like mother's side, father's side, trying to get the connections. And a lot of times, especially if it's like, the great uncle or something like that, they're like, I have no idea who it is.
Right.
So Gayle had to learn to deal with all of that, plus work in corporate America. I mean, I've got my MBA, and it's not necessarily something that people in the metaphysical realm focuses on. So
Sure.
I've got those two hats.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's hard to keep one foot in that world and one foot in the more spiritual metaphysical world.
Mm-hmm.
It's a real balancing act. How did you come to combine shamanic journey with the Reiki that you do? Because to me, that is, I love those sessions. So how
So
did that come about?
that's a funny story, but so I had to trust what I was receiving, was real. And then I decided, there's something about shamanism that I'm really feeling drawn to.
Mhm.
So I took to learn how to do shamanic journeying with my dear friend and teacher. Um, she she basically told me, like, you're going to be doing this, you're going to be teaching this. I'm like, Sally, I am not going to be doing. Sally Beckett McCullum was my teacher. I says, no, I'm not. I'm just learning this. But I started to pick up, like, it was like the door opened.
Mhm.
And so it was almost like a flood of information. So I had talked to her too. She goes, why not share that as you're going? So in the beginning, I didn't talk at all when I did sessions. Now it's like, oh, please, Gayle, just be quiet. These messages just come forward. So I had to learn to step aside and let this flow, and let my, lack of self-confidence or things that I'm like, oh, I don't know if this is real. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to blurt it out and let's see what happens.
I'll never forget the session that we did where there were, I don't know, several interstellar, intergalactic beings that came through and kind of literally pushed you out of the way. All this information was coming through, and about 5 minutes later, you're like, oh, I'm back. What happened?
And that's so I have to admit, I am a control freak. I have to plan things. So what I found, that in order for me to really be able to channel without my interference, the guys decided, we're going to make her a trance channeler and take her out. And so, like, amazing things comes out of my mouth, but I have no clue what was said. I mean, there's other ways to channel, but when they get into really where they're speaking through me, I'm not present.
Right.
Sometimes, and in the beginning, I was like, so you said this. I'm like, I'm sorry, I have no clue. So a friend of mine started recording it. And so then I could hear it,
Mhm.
So my goal still is to be present when it happens.
Mhm.
And once in a while, I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, I was present. The first one, I guess. And they're like, Gayle, there were 7 different beings that came through. I was like, oh, well, the first and the last, I have a sense of it. But then after that, I have no clue. So it's like, hopefully you guys figured it out, because if you don't ask me I would say, I think my span has been maybe an hour, hour and a half. I may be able to have, what I call like the residue of
Uh-huh.
their messages.
Yeah.
But after that, I have no clue
Is there
unless
Right.
it's recorded.
Yeah.
is there one particular source of them, of these beings that come through, that helps you do the healing portion of the work that you do?
So that's an interesting one, because I worked with grandfather bear. And coming from Hawaii, we didn't have bears. Like, I don't know why. My good friend Garrett Duncan had done an initiation with me and Grandfather Bear. And I remember struggling with that, going, okay, I don't see how this is possible, the connection. And they said, well, Gayle, you're a mama bear. You always have been. I was like, that's true. So the bear medicine, if you look at it from the scheme, you got the power, the strength, and you got the female side, the nurturer, caregiver. And I'm sorry, you try to mess with a mama bear with her cubs. Yeah, you talk about power and strength. So I finally figured it out. So I accepted it. So Grandfather Bear is generally there with me in the healing. In fact, in the very beginning, he guided me through that. And then other guides came through as a result of me being able to allow the guidance from him.
When you're doing that work, like when you're doing the Reiki, do you ever have a sense that other people's guides or beings that are with them come through you as well? Not only for the channeling part, but for the Reiki part, and
Yes.
kind of guide you to where it needs to take place.
A lot of times I feel like, okay, I'm just here, guys, show me what to do,
Okay.
and because I would follow, like, I call it a ritual, how to prepare, helping the person to relax, clearing their chakras. As I'm doing that, the other messages will come through, but generally their guides may come through even before I see them. And it generally happens like when I'm going to start my day, I'm taking a shower, and then I'm like, okay, I'm seeing so and so, or they're like, okay, I have a message. I said, all right, I have to work my day job, so keep that, and come in. So it was more about understanding, allow, and trust, which was hard in the beginning. Now I'm like, okay, and I am in my own office space. I can experience the relaxation, releasing the muggle job, and to open up. So that was when I just started experiencing amazing things, and to understand that it's not always me. I think one of the first, I would say, where I really let the guides assist me in the healing process for the person and the messages. I mean, I had worked on her for years, and then she was just going to move, and she stopped. She goes, "Oh my God, Gayle, that was the most amazing experience." And this was past life things, and all these things come in, and I had to say, I have a confession. She's like, "Well, what is this?" It wasn't really all me. And I said, they kind of worked through, so I followed their guidance. She goes, oh my gosh. Because before it was primarily Reiki hand positions, worked, letting the energy flow through me. But that was the first time that I opened up and let them flow. And I was all high after that. So I realized, oh yeah, something truly did happen.
I'm fascinated by the different influences you've got going on there. There are different types of shamans, of course, right? Different
Mhm.
cultures bring them forward. And the ones that you're kind of referencing sound almost Native American versus other cultures. And
Mhm.
you bring a Hawaiian, Japanese culture in it as well. It's
Yeah.
coming from every direction. And it sounds like you're bringing this great composite of all the best practices forward.
So I stopped trying to figure out where it's coming from,
Okay.
because my analytical brain says, okay, like when I call it my healer's language, not the star language or anything. When it first started coming out of my mouth, I was like, what the heck am I saying? Where did that come from? All of these things. I'm all worried and trying to look up and like, has everybody else said this? Because it just keeps coming out. That's when my friend Garrett says, does it matter? Well, I'd like to know. He goes, but how is it in the healing practice? I said, oh, it's amazing. He goes, there you go. Let it go, Gayle. It's like,
Yeah.
fine. But
Well,
yeah, I've even had um, some things that I'm being direct or guided to do. I find out there's a different nationality or even a different country. This is what they do. I said, oh, well, I just followed whoever was guiding me.
I think that's something that shouldn't be lost on us right now is there's all this good coming from all these different directions, and it's like you can mix and match to tune to whatever's best for the person receiving.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've been very blessed to have the trust of who comes through, because some people are like, oh no, evil things might come through. And I'm going, no, I've got my posse there. They're all watching for me.
Yeah.
But
Right.
it's like my way of knowing or allowing is if it feels right in my heart.
Mhm.
And the first time I actually did channel um, it with a client and they wanted to do the work, it was a galactic council. And I was more like, I can't feel your emotions to judge if you are good or bad. So I remember, I mean, it's funny, if a camera was on me, I was like, I'm not going to do it. And they had to convince me that they knew her and
Mhm.
that they're reconnecting. So finally, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to check. And I asked. And she's like, oh, yeah. So she used to be called Little Star Child when she was younger. And I'm going, oh, so when I finally felt okay, I um I allowed, and then after that I don't remember. But I do remember saying them telling me, they were like, okay, now you can go out. We're gonna finish up here. I was like, what do you mean go out? You can go out of the room. I'm going, okay, now you put me on guard. They're like, this is something that's beautiful. They just want to connect directly with her. So I remember walking out of my office, and my friend Marcia, she was in her other office of across from me. And she's a massage therapist plus, because she does all these things. I said, Marcia, do you have any clients? She's like, no. And I walked in there and I shut the door. I said, Marcia, I just channeled and I'm freaking out. And that's kind of how it went. So I had to learn to put myself aside, which, Lori has seen a lot of those things, because I think because I'm so worried about how people may take it, or will they be able to understand, I mean, all that's my things. They're like, okay, we're just going to have you step aside, and so people say, well, they remember where they are when they're not there. I said, I have no clue. I don't know where I go, but then I know when it's time to come back. I
Mhm.
said, it doesn't matter. Maybe I'm taking a nap. I have no idea.
Yeah, who knows where the consciousness goes? I don't know. I'm the same way when that happens. As you were talking, one of the things that came up for me was, and I know we've kind of talked about this before, the mantis beings. They're a group of interstellars, intergalactics, and I know they are not your favorite beings from the standpoint of just being a praying mantis,
Right.
but they're healers. And I'm wondering, do you have any awareness if you're able to channel their energy through with the energy work that you do?
So I know that they are around now, and I know that they're actually good and they were healing me, at the time.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to let that trauma go, but I kind of took it like what you're saying. Originally, you saw them like an Ewok. So I'm like, okay, guys, you can come in looking something else and I'll be okay. I said, just give me time.
Mhm.
I'm going to have to go through that, maybe keep watching Prime Mantis so that I can accept it. But I do hear sounds, like clicking sounds and things, which I believe it is them. So I was like, okay, that's fine. I'm good. Let's just go from there. But a lot of times, who comes through, a lot of them are the spirit animals who help with the healing. So I've learned a lot about how I'll call it the medicines of the different beings, like the dragon. When Grandmother Dragon came in, I was like, I am not worthy, and it's like, oh my gosh, but she was there, and she brought another dragon. He was a green dragon, human size, and we were working on my client. And I feel like, what happened to my client? Because all I remember seeing was Grandmother Dragon and then the other dragon, in front of me. So she was teaching me how to do these things. So we were doing amazing things for the person. They might have fallen asleep. I don't quite remember that whole piece of it, but I did remember saying, can I ask a question? And she's like, okay. And she's like standing at the head of the person. I said, how are you fitting in my office? I said, I thought you would be bigger. And then all of a sudden she kind of showed herself huge where you can only see like her kneecap. And then I'm like, okay, got it. She goes, I'm doing this for you. And I just laughed. But in the meantime, when I had to go to the head, I was like, excuse me, grandmother. Little things like that. But I am just amazed. Who sent them or why do they come? I don't know, but I'm always grateful. And even some that I've never seen before, I'm going, I mean, I do know a lot about animals. So I was like, do you know what an ocelot is? They're like, oh, well, and so I said, let me go grab my book. And I'm looking and I says, oh, that makes sense because there's one right here. So there's a way to connecting them with their spirit guide or using, in the case of a dragon's claw, to go in and dig out whatever it is that's that, maybe the trapped energy or the things that no longer serve, to get that out. And he's like, okay, so I can see myself with a dragon's claw in a way. And I'm like, just my finger. So I'm always amazed going, dang, I don't have that much creativity to even come up with that. So
Well, the question that was coming to mind for me is, I think that they're coming through you and coming to you, and I'm wondering if it's the individual who's coming into your office is bringing that energy with them. And this is the opportunity for those beings then to show up and you to be able to work with them and communicate with them on behalf of that other person.
I have had that happen, and it happens a lot. So I have to make sure the person, especially if it's the first time, I'm like, how much are they willing to hear? You know. But there
Right.
was a husband and wife came in, and the guy was really big, and I saw behind them a Viking. The Viking was so big that he had to kind of turn sideways to get into my office. So I'm just like, oh, it must be the guys, right? But when I started working on his wife first, I was like, oh, he's for her. And
Mm.
then they start sharing messages. So I said, okay, do you believe in past lives? And she's like, yeah. I said, do you believe in, your guides? She's like, I do. I said, okay. So I just told her what happened. She was shocked. She says, I've had this guy with me all my life and nobody ever called it out. And I said, he's right there. So to me, it was like, well, no big deal. He's right there. So I'm going to just address it. So I'm always in awe. So every time I work on someone, I thank them because of the amazing experiences I get to have.
Yeah.
Like if only I could plug a monitor into my head so you could see everything that I'm seeing.
Right. What also strikes me is that it's really, I think, helpful for you because it's allowing you to let go of control and
Yes.
step out of that way and allow whatever needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And just really trust yourself to be able to do it.
And that's what I have to remind myself all the time. I'm still me. Just people say, well, you're going to be this. I said, I'm still me. So I still have my little idiosyncrasies. So if
Absolutely.
they let me, I'm like, okay, I know if I let go, everything's going to be amazing. But can you just let me fidget and worry a little bit, just a little bit, and then I'll let it go. And it's actually worked better because I said, if you just tell me, just trust Gayle, I was like, okay, I'm really uncomfortable. So I'm learning that. And I've had amazing experiences by progressing in that ability to let it go and to say, you know what? You're not the one saying the messages anyway. So just let them say it. I was like, that's true.
And I think for me, that's been the hardest lesson is to get myself out of the way enough and to really believe this isn't coming from me, it's coming
Mhm.
from the person's guide or
Right.
whoever's there with them. My job, if you will, is to just stay out of the way. And I think a lot of us, it's a hard thing to come to terms with and be okay with and let go
Right.
of that control.
Right.
Yeah.
So people who know me, like as a project director and all these things, all of my plannings and everything, and then doing this, they're like, how do you do this? It's not easy. But then I started this way. Then I had to learn that due to traumas that I needed more control. And then, so the control side of it is not always bad. In terms of my muggle jobs, hey, that's what they want. But in terms of doing this stuff, it's a big thing for me to let go. So when like my friend Sally says, you're going to be teaching this, I said, no, I'm not. It's like, are you kidding me? I'm just learning this. But the first time that I was in so much shock was when I received, I call her grandmother. She's White Buffalo Calf Woman. So White Buffalo Calf Woman comes from the Lakota Nation, and she is also known as the peace pipe carrier. She wanted to work with me, and I was like, I'm not worthy, I'm Japanese, all these things. And I realized she made me feel like she is my grandmother trying to reassure me when I'm feeling like, I don't know, grandmother comes in and she gives me this reassurance. And so I started to feel more confident because she'll come in when I'm getting a little fidgety. And once she even said, when have we ever let you down? And I stopped. I said, you haven't, grandmother. So she said, okay. So I always, if I have to catch myself before grandmother comes in. But a lot of times I can feel, because I am really not in my body. When I come back, it's like, whoa, And
Mhm.
so I know something happened, or I can feel it coming on.
I would love to just hear your very best go-to story that you might tell at a party or something among trusted friends, of course, of a healing or a connection that you've made that would just I just feel like you've got a million of them. Is there one that you love to tell?
I do. And, this is what's interesting, because I always thought I would hear the good stuff, right? Always the good stuff because you want to be positive. And sometimes there were bad ones. But one in particular, he had come to me. He goes, there seems to be a block in me being able to um, follow my shaman's path. Because I actually met him when we were at a retreat, and he's like, that was 2 years ago, and you gave me this message, so I want to know more about it. I said, refresh my memory. But I was working on him, and he has done a lot. So I consider him a medicine man, shaman. And all of a sudden I hear, ask him what happened when he was 11. So all I did was just ask. Well, it wasn't a good experience. And he was blaming himself, all of those things. And I said, okay, you don't have to tell me, but I want you to know it wasn't your fault. So you have to release the blame. And he cried, and, I cried and going, okay, it's all right. This is part of it's not a matter of forgetting. It's a matter of releasing it and moving forward. So from helping a person a peer, I would say, um, get through something like that, that was amazing for me. Even though what came through wasn't the most positive, but in terms of getting messages, I think it was 2017. We went to a conference in Washington State. It was actually a Sasquatch conference. And we went up to I think it was the day before setting up, and we were in an open, you can see an amphitheater. It was really nice. We were there, and there were 5 of us. And I had just started channeling. So it's like, you guys want to hear something? Like, they're like, yes, because I wanted to practice. So again, I disappeared. But one of this beautiful elder from the Sasquatch, or the Bigfoot Nation is what people may say, he came forward. I knew who he was because a friend of mine had connected with us, and the gentleman at this conference, I knew who he was just based on your information, but I didn't know he walked into the amphitheater while we were there. So he heard everything. And so this is like Sunday night at, well, actually Monday morning. We're in that amphitheater and we're talking, and he's telling me his stories. And he told me, I walked in there and I saw Camus, who his guide is, behind me. And he said the way I was speaking was the way Camus spoke.
Mm.
And I'm going, wow, because I really wasn't present when it happened. So I was like, that's amazing. Okay, I got validation from somebody who didn't even, like they weren't hearing what we were saying. And then I said, well, when, no, somebody asked, when, when was his first time he had met Camus? And he's saying, oh, I was 23 years old and we were camping. And then I'm hearing, again, same situation. Ask him what happened when he was 9. I was like, now this guy also wrote books. I brought the books, I had him sign them, I never read it. So I'm like, okay. I said, Sunbo, what happened when you were 9? He goes, oh, I remember this angel came in my room and was touching my leg. He said, was that Camus? I said, just from what I'm hearing. And then after that, I had to ask my friends, was that in the book? Because I didn't read it, But no, it wasn't in the book. So my analytical side saying, oh, okay, well, that was true. Oh, so I started building all that. So I've got a lot of all of that going on. But that was an amazing experience for me to have a complete stranger.
Yeah.
And then for him to validate, I was like, this is just, and that's also was the start of my really following the shaman's path.
This is amazing stuff. How can someone bring this into their own life? How can they find you to work with you to do this?
Well, I mean, I'm starting up classes again. So I'm actually on Meetup and on my Facebook. So Facebook is under, I think it's under GEAF Gifts, GEAF GIFTS. I think it's GEAF Gifts Info. And so they can find me in my classes there. I also have a Meetup, and my Meetup is an odd name because I didn't realize how long it would be. But my Meetup is under, let me make sure I get it right. Because you know how you look at it, but you forget. What is my company's name? All right, it's under GEAF Gifts, same way, GEAF GIFTS, Spiritual Growth Meetup. But I also work individually or with, smaller groups and things too. So they can get a hold of me. They can text me if they want to. I don't normally answer my phone because a lot of times I turn my phone off when I'm working with clients. I don't want it to ring. So my cell is 303-521-1707. And so they can reach out or they can text me. The best thing is to text rather than leave a voice message saying they're interested. Or they can send me an email to giftgifts at Comcast, COMCAST.net.
And we'll
it's,
include that in the description for this
Yeah.
video. And do you have a website also?
yes, it's giftgifts.com.
I wouldn't have, I could not have predicted that.
So some people ask me, what's the gift, GEAF? Or they'll pronounce it any other way. I said, no, it's my initials. And so I said, well, how many people have that initials? And I took my maiden name and added it to my middle name. That's why I have 2 middle names. But yeah, so that's gift. And I thought, you can pronounce it GEAF, but I said, no, you can pronounce it as gift too. So GEAF Gifts.
I love it. Absolutely love it. So, okay, well, I think we've run up on time just a little bit, but I want to give Lori the opportunity. Lori, do you have anything else you want to ask or add in?
I don't. This has been fabulous. Thank you for joining us today.
Really
Thank
has
you.
been fascinating. And I've met you in person, but I didn't know all this, so I'm thrilled now to know about it.
Well, you met me while I was running my fair, so I was wearing my different hat.
I understand that. I came from a left-brained project management
Mm-hmm.
career, and just try and match that up with right-brained metaphysical concepts. So they can mesh together, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a big hammer that it takes to get it done.
So I also, that a lot of my clients end up being like us, and they're struggling with this. And I said, oh, I totally get it. And so I'll share my experiences. So they were like, oh, I said, yeah. So, we can't, we can't stop this. It's part of who we are.
Right.
So, you don't have to be like siloed. I said, what if you cut it this way and you flip it this way? Now you get all of that, and that's you.
Yeah.
Ah,
It's a
yes.
growth experience to learn to exercise all those different parts of your skills and brain and get new experiences that way.
Yeah.
But it's just part of our path, our journey. And I learned things, new things, new experiences. So I just remember to be grateful for all of that and try not to put my, like I said, the control freak out too far. Like, okay, let that go, Gail. And
Yeah.
that's what I tell people if they really want to move forward, you need to learn how to let go and let go of the control or let go of the preconceptions.
Right.
Yeah.
That was one of
Which,
the lessons I learned about doing the Sojourn is, and I love to say it just this way, there's no planning. You're not going to get away with doing a bunch of planning. You think this is going to go your way. You think you got it figured out, but then as soon as you get started, there's a curveball you didn't, and that's the way it's intended. And you learn to roll
mhm.
punches.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it turns
this is like
out,
tying back to the very beginning about the shamanic Reiki. So I, being planned, my friend Garrett and I were doing the shamanic Reiki class. And so I was doing this, the Reiki stuff, and he was doing the shamanic. I had my PowerPoint presentation, and I knew when we were going to have a break to do this thing or that thing. And of course, it wasn't flowing. And and then it's like Garrett will say, "Well, grandmother wants to come in, and she wants to say things." I'm like, "That's not until slide 24." He would laugh at me. But then, of course, when it got my idea out of order, it was still amazing. So I think it was purposely meant that way
Mhm.
so that I would see. And now, Gail, yes, you did your presentation, you got stuff, make you feel comfortable, but it doesn't always work that way. So,
Yeah, I get it. I totally get it. I'm right there with you, Gail. So, all right. Well, I'd love to hear more about it, and maybe we can have you back sometime. But I just
I'd
want to
love
thank
to.
you for being with us today, and how much you've imparted to us, and what a good learning experience this has
Oh,
been. So, for our
thank you.
audience, if you have questions for Gail or about the show today, you can put them in the comments, and we'll pass them along as needed, or we'll get them answered for you. And if you have suggestions for future shows, we'd love to hear that. You can put that in the comments as well. And if you enjoyed it, got something out of it, learned something today, give us a like or a share, maybe write some positive comments about that as well. And last and certainly not least, if you'd like to get a hold of either Lori or Tom, you can do that at ourspiritualsojourn@gmail.com. And with that, thanks to Gail. Thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Well, that was fun. Well, that was fun.